Welcome back to the Morning Edition. 5 years ago, Egyptians took to the streets and squares in great numbers to end the rule of Hosni Mubarak, a former general who ruled the country with a heavy hand. Yesterday, current president, former General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, praised the country's 2011 uprising, saying they led to the founding of a new Egypt. But a recent spate of arrests and a heightened security presence in the capital ahead of the anniversary have many questioning just how new it is. Reports of the shootout in Giza, a suburb of Cairo, following the security forces' raid on a suspected terrorist cell and the seizure of assets formerly owned by the Muslim Brotherhood seem to underline the fact that Egypt is still far from stability. The following report looks back at the Arab world's most populous state's 5-year roller coaster.
January 2011, hundreds of thousands of Egyptians poured onto the streets of Cairo. Their demand, the fall of Hosni Mubarak's authoritarian 30-year rule. After 18 days of protests and violence, Mubarak finally stepped down, a staggering result that seemed to herald a new era of democracy. But for young activists like Mustafa, the Egyptian regime is no less repressive today than it was 5 years ago.
We've been banned from appearing on any media for more than 2 years. The small space still available for us in newspapers may or may not stay. But it's my duty and responsibility to say everything I believe, whether the regime likes it or not. Because at the end of the day, we fought for democracy, and democracy has not been implemented yet.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Egypt's new strongman, has already warned against holding demonstrations on the 5th anniversary of the start of the revolution, boosting security across the country. And over the past few months, the government has closed down several cafes and cultural centres that were regular hangouts of activists.
It's all part of an aggressive campaign of arrests and closures of places associated with the revolution. Those places used to embody the culture of the revolution. These used to be the open playgrounds of writers, actors and artists who took part in the revolution from the beginning. Places like Townhouse and Rawabet or Merit, the publishing house, where they used to camp out at during the revolution.
After Mubarak's successor, Islamist Mohamed Morsi, was ousted by the army in 2013, the authorities carried out a brutal police crackdown on his supporters and other opponents. Hundreds were killed and thousands more arrested. But many Egyptians are tired of years of political unrest and economic stagnation and credit Sisi for at least bringing some form of stability.
Egyptians are angry and frustrated. Their living conditions are getting worse every day, and hope for the future has been shaken. No one knows what's in store for them tomorrow.
And what will happen on the anniversary of the revolution is also uncertain, with the iconic Tahrir Square, the epicenter of the 2011 uprising, now totally under control of the authorities.
And joining me in studio this morning is I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Wackett. Good morning, Ali. But first, let's go to Cairo to our contributor, Jacob Wertschafter. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning. So Can I say a couple of things about that report?
Oh, yes, you may.
Okay. So we can say both that nobody knows what's going to happen in Tahrir Square and then say the authorities totally shut it down. And, you know, so the thing is something like this. The state made it very clear that there weren't going to be protests in Egypt on January 25th, and there aren't going to be any protests today. So we shouldn't preview for people that there's going to be some kind of mass uprising or protest in Egypt today. That's not the mood, and I think most observers would agree that's not what the Egyptian people want today. We've seen some militant activity in the suburbs of Cairo. The North Sinai insurgency or Islamic State uprising continues, but there's not a popular political moment here in Egypt. There's a lot of politics, but there isn't some kind of massive demonstration undercurrent that's about to occur here.
Even though authorities did carry out arrests of administrators, for instance, of opposition Facebook pages, and they did search apartments, so there are clearly people who are threatening the government.
Absolutely. I mean, look, there is a small and influential group of young activists who were involved in January 25th, who were deeply alienated from the Sisi administration. There are also people who supported January 25th and supported the uprising against President Morsi, who are trying to figure out how to engage in parliamentary politics and frankly move on with their own businesses, like starting tech startups, something that wouldn't be unfamiliar to you. So there's a balance of forces, and there's a contention for the public space and for what politics is going to look like here.
Yeah. So Jacob, you mentioned these young activists. So these are the people who drove the Arab Spring. Now, where are many of them now? Are some of them are still involved? Are others less involved at this point?
Well, you know, and I'm glad Ali's in studio because he can check me on the numbers. I believe we still have about 200 activists who are non-Muslim Brotherhood who are in jail. The numbers might be higher, but those are about the numbers that I have. The rest of these folks are either in some kind of political opposition, or they've moved on, or they've joined some kind of establishment. Like if you look at where Khalid Daoud is right now, as a spokesman of one of the liberal centrist parties here right now. And where Sharif Arif is, where he's the editorial secretary of Masri al-Yawm. So there are people associated with the January 25th who are in some ways part of the new establishment here.
I see. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for joining us from Cairo with these comments. And we're turning now to Ali. So some analysts say that this Egypt, that Sisi's regime is more brutal and more dangerous than Mubarak's. Is this the case?
Yeah, this is the feeling in the Egyptian street. They are comparing this period of Sisi with the period before the revolution of 2011, and the number of people who were arrested, the number of activists who were killed or arrested. And I think your question, Meredith, about where are the main actors, the young generation that led, and the social change makers that we knew, we discovered with the 2011 revolution. So as Jacob said, only very few of them remain part of the opposition establishment. Most of them are or in jail or decided to emigrate and to leave the country. And this, of course, is a sign of lack of confidence vis-a-vis the regime of President Sisi. And I think this is very symbolic that the army decided to close the Tahrir Square in order to prevent any any protest against the regime, which means that the regime is expressing zero tolerance vis-a-vis any significant opposition.
So that must breed a lot of fear in Egypt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there is a generation in Egypt that is not participating in the atmosphere, in the ideology that President Sisi supporters are trying to say, stability versus democracy. Mm-hmm. They think that that the Egyptian can achieve both of them, and one of them is not going on behalf of the other, because the regime and the official media is trying to say that protesting against the regime will serve the Islamic State, will serve the insurgency. And I don't think this is the equation that the Arab world, in this case the Egyptian, should live with democracy or anarchy. And
finally, just quickly, please, Ali, just 5 years after this all began, do you think this was the Egypt that Sisi envisioned?
I don't. For Sisi, yes. I think that this suits Sisi,
considering all the militant activity, and
this suits the. If you are talking about what is happening in Sinai and terror attacks that are happening here and there, I don't think that Sisi and the military establishment hope to see. But yes, the military echelon is now in its best situation ever in the modern Egypt, even more than Nasser, Sadat, and Mubarak. And the investments in the Egyptian activity in the military is coming, of course, on behalf of the social, of the economy, and of the hope for the young generation.
And as you and Jacob mentioned, they really seem to have full control as well. Ali, thank you very much for being with us this morning.